This is your stock and ETF update for Thursday, January 11th. Okay, once again, I'm just going to show you the weekly chart in the S&P and remind you that there are some timing cycles, but again, don't get stuck thinking that it has to put in a more important high, because it certainly doesn't have to. And the markets prove that to you, because you'll see a lot of times where we've had cycles before and the market's not giving you any reversal indications. But you want to be aware of the possibilities just in case something does start to happen. So my alternate time projections, we're starting to move beyond those. So I'm looking to see if there's, anything else that makes sense. And of course, here's the high to high of 24 days, high to high of 28, high to high of 23, and high to high of 22, which means that we'd have another couple of weeks as far as the time window if we're looking at these highs to highs and then comparing it to the most recent high to high, which is 22 weeks. Okay, so again, there's time resistance to the rally, the market's extended, but we're not seeing any major sell signals. So just keep that in mind. Now let's take a look at, let's see, S&P futures. So did the market pull back a little bit more today? Yeah, a little bit. But guess what? It's such a shallow pullback that, we're in the higher end of support, and we've already started seeing some new, at least short-term buy signals against this pullback decision. So this is what you need to know. Even though we're in the position to get a deeper pullback, we may not see it, and you have to focus on trading the setups. So the setup is, in this case, this symmetry, and if we continue to hold above this zone, 2766, let's just call that a quarter, is going to be your initial upside target. So again, just don't get stuck on making assumptions that the timing is going to kick in for a more important high, because we don't know that. So just continue to trade the setups as they unfold, rather than trying to be a hero and call the top of the market. So as far as the 120-minute chart, you can also see where the support comes in. But let's look at the fact that within this time window, we took out a prior swing low here. So could we potentially fail? Yeah, we could, but this is where we'd have to fail if we're going to. And that's anywhere between, let's say, the 618 and 786 retracement of this swing. That also overlaps 100% of this prior rally swing. So let's say if this is a more important high, this is the area that we should fail around or below. But notice that if we take this out instead, we're probably going to make a new extension to the upside and another all-time high. Okay, so here's your next immediate decision, anywhere from this 2751 to, well, let's just call that 55 area, if we just round that off. So that's your next immediate decision, but if we push through it, 2766 and a quarter is your next target. NASDAQ. So again, we anticipated a possible pullback. We got a little bit more of a pullback than we've seen in recent sessions, but you can't make the assumption that it's a more important high in the NASDAQ either. So let's see what we have on, the daily chart. I started running some pullbacks just in case we see a deeper downside correction like we did over here, and that comes in way below the market. But what about the intraday chart? Do I have anything there? And the answer is yes. We had on the 120-minute chart some support. I posted, I believe I posted this chart on box.com this morning, and you have to notice that if we take out this 66.77 area, we are more likely to make a new high with 67.28 as your initial upside target. Okay, so was there a buy set up sooner than the daily chart? Yep, and here it is. All right, what about so IWM? I gave you this. I believe that I posted this as an alert for a day trade decision, because I haven't done a whole lot in the IWM because I hadn't seen too much lately. But I did see that, let's see, the most recent high to low was kind of similar to this prior decline, 165 versus 158, plus there was a 786. So this I gave you as a decision, and I believe the market was like here, and then it did give you some buy triggers. If we continue to rally from this low, your initial upside target's 155.93 and then 156.48. So this one is still in play. Gold. Okay, so this is where we did have a nice little spike up today into this time window. So I'm still going to watch this time window for a possible high and reversal back down. Okay, we may not have a perfect hit of resistance, but this is a really healthy cluster of timing cycles. So if there's any time that you're going to look for sell setups, even though they're going to be counter trend at the moment, this would be the time to start focusing on those. Now, did we have much in the way of reversal? No. So I'm still going to give you both sides of this market. If you want to look at, puts or put spreads with this timing in mind, that's one way, or that's one thing that you can do. But if you're trading gold outright, I have to show you that since we did clear this resistance, okay, and then you made an extension, I have to set up the pullback again. So there's more than one trade here. You're either going to be betting against those cycles, putting in a tradable top, or you could be betting on this pullback for another possible buy entry. One of them obviously is not going to work, but you have to decide which time frame you're trading, and then go with the one that you're comfortable with. As far as okay, this is a pattern. This is actually the Bitcoin futures, and I don't want to use this data to give you trade setups, but I did want to point out something that I would have done if we had some decent data in this. Okay, so this is like the continuous contract for the Bitcoin futures. But check this out. You've taken out a prior swing high, and then it looks like you've had like a symmetrical pullback. This is something that I would be all over. You'd want to just set up, for example, the symmetry of the prior swing. Oh yeah, that's almost perfect. And then, you can also run the retracement and see if that overlaps. But bottom line, that's the type of pattern that I like to see. If you have a breakout, I don't want to buy the breakout. I want to buy the pullback after the breakout, because that's where you're going to get a low risk entry. Okay. Let's take a look at the crude. So again, we still had some, timing cycles, or we have one here on the 10th, but we're not seeing any real reversal indications in the crude. You're definitely closer to resistance, and you're definitely extended to the upside, so it's in the position correct, but we're not really seeing anything major just yet. As far as the 120-minute chart, I believe I gave you this chart this morning off of the 120, where I took these prior declines within the uptrend, and even though you did see a little bit of a pullback, it's still holding above symmetry. And if we continue to hold above symmetry, your initial upside target in crude is 63.83 and then 64.03. All right, let's look at a few more here. We've got Apple still seems to be on target for potential rally towards that 178, 179 area. Let's see, there's a little bit of timing here. Well, we're not really going straight up into it, so forget about that. But as far as the intraday, this is one of the day trading setups that I gave in the main trading room today, where we had tested some of the deeper support with a two-step pattern decision. And we hit, we held, we triggered for a day trade. But this is something that you have to remember. If the two-step's going to play out, then yes, we have 176.32 and 177.22 as targets. But I also want you to watch the hurdle on the way up that comes from, well, it's simply going to be this low to this high, projected from the low, and then 618 retracement. So this is an important hurdle that we would need to clear if Apple is going to head towards these targets. And honestly, I'm not sure if I just did it in the main room, or if I gave you an alert on it. But let's see if we can take that out in Apple. Amazon pulled back into some symmetry. Now, I'm not going to be real aggressive as far as trying to get you guys in on some of these short-term buys, okay? And the reason why is because of the time resistance and because we're, meeting some key targets on the upside, okay? If you want to use some of that stuff, definitely download the charts that I do on box.com. And yeah, in this case, I'm not sure that I actually gave you this in advance because we're too close to this time resistance, and I'm kind of worried about my newbies trying to get in here when the original setup was down here, or pullback zone over here. I mean, up here it's a lot scarier. As far as could it go higher? Yeah, it could. 1268.21 would be the next upside target, and I still want you to have some relatively tight stops. Now here's something else that you want to know about, though. So here's where there's symmetry, that I showed you both on the daily chart, and you can also see it here. But here's something else that you need to watch, and that would be the symmetry of this prior rally swing. If we are indeed going to, get another shot up, we need to clear this 1255 area. Facebook, we've already met one key target on the upside. The next one doesn't come in until 193 on the daily chart. On an intraday chart, the only other thing you can really add is maybe this minor extension for a shorter term target, which comes in at 189.79. Google. Okay, here, this is kind of interesting in Google. So you know that I had time resistance in Google. Okay, and there are some of you that are maybe nimble enough to, take some of these trades, but I want to show you how you can make it really a low risk entry. Now, the bigger picture is still a bullish chart, okay? But we know because of timing that we could see a deeper downside correction, and some of you are going to try and trade it for that correction. But let me show you the right way to do it, or at least in my opinion. Okay, so we had the timing. You took out a prior swing low, okay? I don't want you to sell it down here. I want you to wait for the pullback where you have the edge, if you're going to look at it at all. And here I'm taking 100% of these swings, 100% of this, an extension of this, a retracement of this. And if you want an area to potentially base a short bet against, it should be anywhere from here to here. This 11.10.71 to 11.15.27. If you want to break it down into two smaller zones, you can. But then this way, you don't have a ridiculous amount of risk. If you're selling lows and then stopping yourself out up here, you're going to get your butt kicked. But if you wait for very specific levels and are happy to get out if it doesn't continue in your favor, for some of you, this may be okay. As far as Tesla, the pattern still gives me higher targets. Now, there are some timing cycles, but I don't worry about those too much because of the fact that, we're not up at extensions where moves tend to terminate in this one. So I'm still going to actually look at Tesla on the buy side for a potential move towards the 358 area. Netflix, this one I didn't really set up the pullbacks for you up at these areas because of the fact that we're, relatively extended and we have time resistance to the rally in the next couple of trading days. But if you are still in it, your next targets potentially are 218.53 to 220.45. And if you just looked at this micro decision, you'll just see some minor targets that will come in before that at 214 to 216 area. Goldman Sachs is hanging in there, time and price together here, and we'll see if the last low is any good. Your potential upside target is going to be the 265 area, so that's something you can still look at. And Win. Now Win went a little bit lower. There's not a new buy trigger since it made this last low. There was a buy trigger against, the first test of this zone, though, as far as Win is concerned. Okay, but if you're not in it and you're waiting for a new trigger, you don't quite have it yet, I don't think. Let me just double check and see if anything happened later in the session. So when, yeah, the 15-minute chart did not trigger yet, and the 30-minute chart did not trigger yet. Okay, this was an old trigger over here, but as far as a new one, we don't have it. I believe the only place where it triggered was, you know, something like a 5-minute chart. But if this general zone continues to hold up, I'm still going to look for higher prices with 173.96 as the initial upside target. One of the things that somebody asked me about a while back was if you're better off waiting for the symmetry to be cleared. And I would say you probably are. Okay, so if you want to look at that this way, then that means you really need to push through the symmetry of this last swing down here, which means you have to get above this 162.65 area. But also, ideally, you'd want to get above here too. So here, I would have to wait, you know, for it to get through that, and then I would look at buying the next pullback. You don't always get the pullback, but you know, that's the other way to look at this. You know, if you want a stronger setup, you probably want to see it take out the bearish symmetry of this last swing down. TLT, I did some of this in the breakout session. I didn't read all the news about what was going on in the bond, but somebody said something about the Chinese dumping bonds. But bottom line, this support I gave you this morning on box.com, I don't have any meaningful resistance until up here, but otherwise looking for maybe a bit more of a bounce off of that key support decision in TLT. It is a counter trend trade though. If you want to wait for the trend trade setup, see if it trades up into this general area, and then when it does that, then you can look for a sell trigger. All right, let's look at just a couple more things here. Baidu, either the 243 or the to 245 area or 241 area are areas that I would focus on for new buy entries in Baidu. AVGO went slightly through the symmetry, but not enough to negate it as far as this area for support. The AMAT intraday stuff didn't hold up, but the daily stuff did, so I think this one is worth looking at. And I also added timing work today, so we have some time and price here for a possible low in AMAT. Costco, this I did in the main room, and I love the fact that this is 16 down and this is 16 down. It's a two-step pattern into a cluster of support that includes symmetry, and it has the potential to 198.47. Now, has it triggered yet? Let's see. Costco. I know that some of you don't wait for the triggers, but and you just define the risk against the zone. That's your choice if that's the way you want to do it. But if you're waiting for a trigger, we're not seeing it on a 15-minute chart, which means you also haven't seen it on a 30. So that's a decision though that you can look at in Costco. AT&T, I did this one in the breakout session. What's interesting about this one is that this is one of the few shorts that I've had in a long time, and the time and price symmetry held up nicely here because you had 33 days up, 693, 34 days up, 678. It never cleared that resistance. After an initial bounce, it never took out that old resistance, and now you have to watch the decisions on the way down. So be aware that here are some areas that you could bounce from, okay, if you took the, or if you're still in the short in T. KMB, we did this one in the breakout session. It's worth looking at because we have some time and price support here. I do not believe that we have the a trigger yet, except for maybe, you know, for a day trade you might have had one. And then there's something else. You probably want to go watch the breakout video, which is in the archives. But there's a two-step pattern into resistance in AGN and timing, okay? But that is the daily chart setup. So the daily chart setup would be, you know, this two-step, and your risk would be defined above this area. But if you look at a 30-minute chart, you're looking at a totally different time frame. These charts are not in sync with each other, okay? Because on this time frame chart, I have a buy setup. So, you know, which side or which time frame are you more likely to trade against? The resistance on the daily or the support on the intraday? Okay, so if you're going to look at the intraday, you can define your risk underneath this area and look for a potential upside target up here. And then, of course, the resistance is what you're going to have to watch if you're going to look at the daily chart setup, which is a two-step pattern into resistance. This is where it can get confusing, okay? The best setups are going to be where the daily chart setup is in agreement with the 30-minute setup, okay? That's when, you know, it's a little less difficult to trade. That's what I have for you. I mean, I think that's enough to work with, plus there are extra charts that will be underneath this video if you download that chart packet file. And I will see you guys tomorrow.